I'm back with another spooky story and a bit of a cold. Sorry. This one is particularly scary because it's about a haunted house and what this woman has gone through since buying this home. The spookiest part is that she still lives in this home and she's looking for advice on basically what she should do aside from moving out because that's apparently not an option for her. So, I'm going to start out telling you what this woman has been experiencing, and you guys let me know down in the comments what do you think she should do. My husband and I accidentally bought a haunted house, and it was the worst decision of our lives. A few years ago, my husband and I moved into a new home after the birth of my son. We were first-time homebuyers and new parents, so we were both excited and exhausted by all the change in our lives. So I think that's why we overlooked all of the red flags when buying this home. When we first saw the listing, we were surprised at how affordable the home was compared to other listings in the area. But we decided to check it out anyway since our budget was tight and we didn't have many options. When we got home, our realtor told us that she'd spoken with the seller's agent and found out that the owners were currently going through a divorce, so they were very motivated to get rid of it. When touring the home, I had a strange, kind of unsettling feeling that I'd never felt before. This made me reluctant to buy the home, but my husband talked me into it by reminding me that we really had no other options. We decided to put in an offer, which was immediately accepted, and about a month later, we moved in. About 2 weeks after moving in, I was home alone setting up my son's room when I heard what sounded like footsteps directly behind me. As soon as I turned around, the footsteps stopped. I called out my husband's name just in case he'd come home early, but there was no answer. Despite feeling a little creeped out, I continued setting up the room. All of a sudden, a picture that I had just hung up on the wall flew from the wall down to my bare feet at the center of the room as if it had been thrown. It hit the floor so hard that the glass shattered everywhere. Trying my best not to step on glass, I went to pick up the broken frame and realized it was our family photo, the only picture I had in the room of all three of us. At this point, my baby had woken up and was crying, so I rushed out the room to check on him. A couple of days later, I was in the kitchen cleaning up while FaceTiming with my mom. While I was talking, she cut me off and asked who was there with me. I told her I was alone. My husband was at work. She gave me a look and asked if I had the TV on, which I did not. I asked her why she was asking me these questions. And she told me that she heard what sounded like a muffled male voice coming through the phone, and she saw the dish towels behind me moving, even though I was nowhere near them. We both sat in silence for a few minutes trying to hear the voice, but only my mom could hear it, and she couldn't make out what was being said. Then the call dropped, and I couldn't call her back because all of a sudden I had no service. Later that day, my son was in his room napping when I heard a sound coming from the baby monitor. When I went over to check the feed, I saw my baby sleeping on the video screen, but I also heard a rustling sound that I'd never heard on the monitor before. I turned up the volume and put the receiver up to my ear, and that's when I heard a very faint whisper in a woman's voice that said, quote, "He looks just like him." I panicked and ran into his room, flinging the door open and looking around as if I would see a kidnapper or something. But there was no one there, and my son was sound asleep. Too scared to leave him alone, I sat in a chair in his room and pulled up the footage so I could confirm what I had just heard. But guess what? Somehow, the footage was gone. When I tried to go back to that specific time of the recording, the screen glitched and all I saw and heard was static. I told my husband about what was going on, but since he hadn't experienced anything unusual, he assumed I was just a tired new mom. A couple of weeks go by, and my husband, who's in the military, receives an assignment that would take him out of the country for 6 months. My mom wanted to come stay with us to help out, but she and my dad had some health issues, so that really wasn't an option. Instead, my parents helped us pay for a part time nanny. Everything was going well with the nanny until one night after she had put my son to bed and was getting ready to leave. All of a sudden, my son started scream crying out of nowhere. We rushed into his room and I picked him up to console him. Despite holding him and rocking him, he couldn't be consoled. So I went ahead and pulled down his onesie to check on his diaper, and I audibly gasped when I saw fresh marks, including bruises and scratches, all over his body. I rushed him to the hospital. The doctor told me that in addition to the marks on his body, he also had a low grade fever, but otherwise seemed okay. However, hospital policy was that in cases like this, CPS had to be called. So I spent the next few hours being questioned by them. CPS seemed to think it was the nanny, even though when I pulled up the nanny cam footage from the entire day, I didn't see the nanny doing anything other than caring for my son. I told my husband what happened, and he also assumed it was the nanny, so we ended up firing her. About a year goes by without any major incidents, but I still experience some strange occurrences like hearing footsteps and generally feeling uneasy. I was able to deal with it because it was mild, and once my husband was back, I felt much safer. That all changed about a week after my husband left for another assignment. I was folding laundry while my son was playing with his toys on the floor when all of a sudden my son throws his toy across the room and yells, "BB, stop! No hit." I crouched down on the floor and asked him why he threw his toy, but my son's gaze was fixed on the wall where he threw the toy. His breathing was hard, and he was scowling as if he was angry. I gently cupped his face and turned his head towards me and asked again why he did that, and he said, "I don't like it." "Don't like what?" I asked. He responded by showing me his arm and making a scratching and hitting motion. Then he pointed to the wall where he threw the toy. I asked him why he was scratching himself, and he said, "I don't. BB Scratch." I asked him who BB is, since we don't know anyone by that name. And all he did was point to the same part of the wall. Freaked out, I grabbed my son and decided to leave the house for a bit. We drove to the park and I called my mom to tell her what was going on. My mom was convinced there was something evil in my home and didn't want me to go back. So we left to go stay with my parents. Once my husband was back from his assignment, my son and I moved back. My husband and I had multiple conversations about moving, but it just wasn't possible given how much home prices had skyrocketed. I decided to consult our church's pastor about the occurrences, and he agreed with what my mom said. There was likely a malicious spirit of some sort that was attached to the home. When he came to bless our home, he specifically mentioned an ominous presence in my son's room and ensured the spirit was gone after the blessing was done. It seemed to work because we had no incidents for about 2 years after the blessing. Unfortunately, for the past month, my son has started talking to BB again and now suffers from night terrors. Our pastor performed another blessing shortly after this started, but that hasn't made a difference. This has also severely impacted my husband and I's relationship to the point that I'm actually considering talking to a divorce lawyer. If anyone has any advice on what's happening in our home and how we can stop it, please let me know, as this is really tearing my family apart.